Thank you.
Good. So my voice is okay?
Yes, sir. You are absolutely fine.
Fine.
Your voice. We are waiting for others to join.
Can you hear me? Hello from Cyprus
Yes,
High Commission.
yes. Good evening, Your Excellency.
Good evening to everybody.
Very nice to have you here.
Same here. I'm very happy. Thank you. I'll join you in a while.
Yeah. So we will wait for 1 minute and as others will join.
Yeah. Good afternoon, all the excellencies and all the friends.
Namaskar, sir. Namaste, sir.
Namaskar, Dhananjay. Namaskar. Namaskar, Bandhopadhyay ji.
So good evening to all of you. As most of the guests have arrived, first of all, let me wish you all a very happy International Greek Day. I think His Excellency Dionysios Kivitos has joined. So I welcome you all. I'm unable to see the ambassador of Greece. It's my pleasure and privilege to welcome His Excellencies, the Ambassador of Greece, Mr. Dionysios Kivitos, His Excellency Mr. Agis Lizou, High Commissioner of Cyprus, His Excellency Mr. Brendan Ward, Ambassador of Ireland, and Her Excellency Ms. Catherine Kivi, Ambassador of Estonia, His Excellency Mr. Ugo Astuto, Ambassador of the European Union, and Her Excellency Ms. Eleonora Dimitrova, Ambassador of Bulgaria, Mr. Alexandros Boudouris, the Deputy Chief of Mission of the Embassy of Greece, Ms. Ismini Panagopoulou Boudouris, First Counselor and in charge of the Political and Cultural Affairs in the Embassy of Greece, our keynote speaker, Professor Bharat Gupta, my senior colleagues, Professor Aruni Bandhopadhyay ji, Professor Sushant Mishra ji, Professor Rajneesh ji, Professor Dhananjay ji, Dr. Abha Yadav, our Dean, Professor Mazhar Asif ji, and my colleagues and students. It's a day which we celebrate in the commemoration of the national poet of Greece, Dionysius Solomos, and in honor of this great language, Greek language, which has given the finest literature which we consider nowadays, which has inspired many great epics as well as books, as well as theories in this world. I see this language as the language which, initiated the scientific inquiry scientific inquiry, freedom, the thought of freedom, this brought the concept of democratia to the world. So there are many aspects about which we can discuss. I have a list of speakers today who will discuss almost every aspect of the language and how it has impacted the world literatures. I welcome you all for the inauguration of this webinar. I request His Excellency, the Ambassador of Greece, to say, to inaugurate the webinar with his speech. His Excellency.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy and honored today to welcome you to this celebration of the beauty and the wealth of the Greek language. The International Day of the Greek Language was established relatively recently in 2017. It aims to highlight the role that Greek has played in the world culture and to encourage diaspora Greeks as well as all the Phil-Hellenes to learn more about the Greek language. It is celebrated on the 9th of February today, as it coincides with the commemoration of the death of the anniversary of Greece's national poet Dionysios Solomos, who was from the island of Zakynthos. Dionysios Solomos wrote the legendary poem Hymn to Liberty in 1823, inspired by the struggle of Greece for independence from the Ottoman Empire at that time. His verses were so powerful that this poem went on to become the national anthem of both Greece and Cyprus, hence immortalizing the landmark moment in our history. I'm particularly happy today that the High Commissioner of Cyprus, my friend Agis Louizou, is also participating with me in today's celebration. Of course, I want to thank all my other colleagues that have joined this festive day. On account of this connection of the Greek language to freedom and independence, I'm equally honored that today's event is also integrated in the celebrations for the 75th anniversary of India's independence, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. Greece, ever since last year, is also celebrating the 200th anniversary of their independence. So it is a pleasure and honor to celebrate International Greek Language Day in this happy conjunction. And here, allow me to stress one more the particular deep historical and cultural bonds that we share with a country such as India, which has a millennia-old civilization that exerted a huge influence on world culture as well. Just to add one more event that we are celebrating this year, and since Greece is a European Union member state, the embassy and me personally would like to take the opportunity to remind that this year also coincides with the 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations between India and the EU. And with these words, I would like to come back to you, dear Professor Anil Kumar Singh, and to thank you very much, to thank you warmly for organizing this wonderful event and for bringing together all these distinguished Indian academics and Phil-Hellenes. The Greek chair at the JNU is an important bridge of friendship and culture between our two countries. And we are thankful and supportive of its work, as always. We are deeply moved to celebrate the Greek language in the capital of such a great country and civilization, in incredible India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. May I now request the High Commissioner of the Republic of Cyprus to share his views with all of us.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. My dear Dionysius, my dear colleague ambassadors, distinguished academics, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, students, It is with great honor and pleasure that I'm here today to celebrate the International Greek Language Day with you. To this effect, I would like to thank the organizers for this initiative. And as you know, Cyprus is a great supporter of the chair, and congratulations for the great job you are doing. I thank the Greek Embassy for everything they have done for today's event. And for myself, as a Greek Cypriot and lover of languages and linguistics, my presence here to celebrate my mother tongue is of great importance, especially here in India. And Indians do understand this, as the Sanskrit language, and I know that well, as my mother was a Sanskrit and Indian philosophy scholar, has been extremely influential in a very similar way as the Greek language has been throughout the centuries around the world. The strength of a country lies in the resilience of its people and the tenacity of its culture, in their determination to promote common good, of course. And a strong and influential language, as the Greek one has always been and will always continue to be, is an integral part of these endeavors. At times when confusion reigns and much wisdom and determination are needed so that peace, security, stability, and prosperity can prevail, language and the way it is used plays an extremely important role in this respect. Thus, it comes as no surprise that the absolute richness of the Greek language is present in countless important literary, scientific, official, and other documents, no matter in which language they are drafted, around the globe and throughout history. My dear friends, today's celebration is also an opportunity to reaffirm the excellent relations between Cyprus, Greece, and India, which has proliferated into decades-long solid partnerships that continue to diversify and deepen both on a bilateral and multilateral level. Our countries are tied by historical strong bonds of friendship based on principles and values laid down by our two great civilizations, the Greek and the Indian one, to which the Greek language plays a pivotal role. Thank you so much for listening, and all the very best to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now, may I request Ms. Ismini Panagopoulou to present preparation by the ministry regarding this particular day. There is a video which she will play, which has been, a message to the world regarding this beautiful language and about this day. Ms. Ismini Panagopoulou, please.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, distinguished professors, distinguished guests. Thank you very much. I'm also very delighted to celebrate the International Greek Language Day with you, and allow me to especially thank Anil Ji for his enthusiasm and great work to make this celebration a reality in difficult times of a pandemic. So I'm sharing my screen now to project a video that was compiled by our general, the General Secretariat for Public Diplomacy on the occasion of this day, where people from all around the world are saying Greek words in their language. So.
About pedagogy, psychology, geology, astronomy, anthropology, chemistry, physics, botany, grammar, and my personal favorite, archaeology.
Biologie, économie, politique, démocratie, chimie, physique, psychologie, musique, triathlon.
麦克风、
马拉松、
爱琴海、
奥林匹克、
泰坦、
歇斯底里、
diplomatie, autobiographie, cosmopolite, arôme,
teórico, esférico, política,
sísmico, atleta, onomatopeya, olímpico,
palíndromo,
filosofía, teatro, poesía,
فلسفة مترو سريع أخطبوط إكسوبرا.
La géographie, c'est amogrec, geographia. La technologie, technologia. La métallurgie, metallurgia. Graphique, graphikos. De la typographie, bien sûr, typographia. Devenu un symbole, symbolon.
polémica, política, maratón, cronómetro, episodio, hay muchas palabras.
Fotografía, caos, cosmos y mitología.
Bibliothèque, on range des livres.
Professor.
Akademi, analys, akrobat, astrologi, anatomi, arkeologi, biografi, cylinder, cyniker, dialog.
Le mot histoire vient du grec historia.
Higiene, historia,
Genial.
Pasión.
protagonista,
Magia.
comedia,
Hipócrita.
plástico.
Analyse, programme, allergie.
Économie, biologie, archéologie, démocratie, philosophie, pharmacie.
Philosophie, métaphysique, logique, hypothèse,
Náufrago, ideal, mitologia, música, museu.
Democracia. Escola. Filosofia. Teoria. História. Cosmos. Ritmo. Stihia. Carácter. Poesia. Nanotecnologia. Técnica. Programa.
L'armonia, l'energia.
Drama, economy, democracy, speed, history, theatre, cardiology, music, photography, aviation. Teorema, algebra, geometria, museu, música.
L'un des thèmes de l'Odyssée est la nostalgie.
How about the name Stephen and Stephanie? Theory, theorize, a theoria.
乌托邦、西门尼、utopia。
逻辑
La simpatia, la sintonia, l'euforia, la nostalgia.
Dieta, sandal, planeta.
Water, energy, symétrie, symptôme, phrase, hierarchy, history, chronometer.
Logik, Grammatik, Dialekt, System, Idee.
Diet, demokrati, ekonomi, egoism, elektricitet, filosofi, fotografi, fysik, geometri, gastronomi.
Symphonie, Philharmonie, Stadion, Theater, Biathlon, Triathlon.
Crise, catástrofe, política, tragédia, clima.
Pedagogie, nostalgie, geographie, geometrie, melodie, philosophie.
Mathétique, paradigme, pédagogique, philosophie, géographie, gynécologie, harmonie, phonétique et de chanteté.
Simetria, symptôme, sympatia, métaphore, métaphysique.
Harmoni, idé, kaos, karisma, katolik, lexikon.
थैंक यू, बहुत धन्यवाद जी।
Well, if you allow me to also move to my humble presentation dedicated to India and Greece.
Yes, yes, please.
Yes, so I would like to say that commemorating the International Day of the Greek Language in India is a privilege given the shared linguistic heritage between our two countries. So first of all, I'd like to say that as no language grew in a vacuum, expert linguists accept that there are linguistic bridges between the Greek language and the languages spoken in India in particular. There is a multitude of common linguistic roots in Sanskrit and ancient Greek. Who influenced who in this centuries-old linguistic journey is a subject for the experts, but the linguistic bridges have always been there. There is historical evidence that the Greek language was spoken in the Indian subcontinent since ancient times. One of the most famous Greek poets of the 20th century, Constantine Cavafy from Alexandria, captured this linguistic journey in his poem entitled In 200 BC, with the famous verse, "And the common Greek language we carried to the heart of Bactria, to the Indians." Also, according to some historical sources like Apollonius of Tyana, during the Hellenistic period, Greek was spoken in the Indian subcontinent, namely in certain Indian villages. And according to him, it was also spoken by a number of local Indian rulers, such as the Indo-Parthian king Gondophares, whom we can see depicted in this 4-drachma coin of the Hellenistic period. But we also want to stress that the approach of the Hellenistic rulers of the time was not one of imposition of the Greek language, but one of respect for the local culture. And this included the language aspect. A famous and emblematic surviving monument for both our countries, which immortalizes this aspect, is the famous Heliodorus pillar. Heliodorus was an ambassador of the Indo-Greek king Antialcidas, who traveled all the way from Takshila to the heart of India in Madhya Pradesh, near modern-day Bhopal. And there he erected and dedicated this pillar to the Indian god Vasudeva. The scriptures of the pillar were not in Greek language, but in the local Prakrit language and in Brahmi script, hence honoring the local religion and language. So for us, it is always important to commemorate this particular monument. And now coming back to the present, please please allow a very humble beginner learner of Hindi language and amateur to just mention a few words that might have actually influenced Hindi directly from Greek, I mean, without the intermediary of English or Latin languages. For example, charitra, which means character in Hindi and coming from the Greek word charakteras, character. The word academy, coming from the Greek word akademia, initially from Plato's school, that has come to mean any higher education institution, academy. Then the word kanun, which means rule in Hindi, and there's the Greek word kanonas, which also means rule. A very common word used is police, police, coming from the Greek word polis, meaning city in the urban community structure sense. And last, a very common word in Hindi is dam, meaning price or value. They say it's coming from the Greek word drachma, that was the ancient Greek coin and the modern Greek coin until we adopted the euro. And to finish with a humoristic note, I should say that some of my compatriots are still researching the peculiar connection between the Greek word Samos for the island of Samos and the Indian specialty of samosa. Who knows, maybe that's a topic for future research. Thank you very much. Bahut dhanyavad, Eftaristo Poli.
Thank you, Ismini-ji. It's so wonderful. Also, I agree that there are much similarities between Sanskrit and Greek, but this samos and samosa is a little bit too far. Thank you. We have with us Her Excellency Ms. Catherine Kiwi, His Excellency Mr. Ugo Astuto, and Her Excellency Ms. Eleonora Dimitrova with us. They have conveyed their best wishes to all of us, although they are present, but they are not, they don't want to take much time of us, and they have conveyed their best wishes. So I now request His Excellency Mr. Brendan Ward, the Ambassador of the Republic of Ireland, he would enlighten us with her views on this particular day.
Thank you very much, Professor. Your Excellencies, dear Dionysius, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and a privilege to participate in this event on Greek Language Day. The presence of so many distinguished scholars, and indeed the fact that Greek is considered worthy of study in Indian universities, is a testament to the global influence and importance of this ancient language. Almost 50 years ago, when I entered secondary school in Dublin, I found myself among the supposedly elite boys who had the privilege of studying ancient Greek. I cannot say that it seemed like a great privilege at the time. It was the first occasion I encountered an alphabet other than Latin, and like many schoolboys over the centuries, if not millennia, I wrestled with the grammar and the syntax. However, even at that young age, I appreciated the opportunity to read the thoughts of some of the greatest minds of the ancient world in the language they had used and been familiar with in their lives and their work. Another alumnus of my old school, James Joyce, turned to Homer's Odyssey for the structure of his great modernist novel, Ulysses. While my knowledge of the language has dimmed almost to extinction in the subsequent years, in maturity, I've come to appreciate this ancient thought and the influence of early Greek thinkers on the world as we know it, particularly but not exclusively in modern Europe. Of course, as we've just seen in that video presentation, the ancient language also survives in many scientific and technical terms common to many languages which have their roots in classical Greek. It goes without saying that the language is intimately connected with the people of Greece. Its survival and evolution over the past almost 5,000 years has been almost miraculous. The history of the Balkans, Asia Minor, the Aegean, and the wider Mediterranean can be traced through the ebb and flow of the Greek language as the language of rhetoric and erudition in the Roman Empire, as the language of the great Byzantine Empire for 1,000 years, and to the darker days of Ottoman domination, and finally to its emergence as the language of the modern Greek state. While Greek does not enjoy the cultural preeminence of 2,000 years ago, it is still flourishing. Two modern Greek writers, Georgios Seferis and Odysseus Politis, have been awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. And many people consider that Nikos Kazantzakis is one of the exclusive group of great writers who should have, but did not, receive that award. Another great figure of modern Greek literature, who has already been mentioned, the poet Constantine Cavafy. During my time in Egypt, he was still very much remembered in Alexandria, the city where he lived and is buried, and which was home to a flourishing Greek community with its own schools and newspapers up to the late 1950s. Greek is also today the language of 2 member states of the European Union, and thus retains global importance and gains more global exposure. Let me finish by thanking our host, the Ambassador of Greece, and congratulating the Indian scholars who devote their studies to the Greek language, its literature, and the associated culture. Their activities attribute not only to the importance of Greek, but also to the vigor and breadth of Indian intellectual life. Thank you all, or Sas Epharisto.
Epharistopouli, thank you very much, Your Excellency. May I now request Professor Bharat Gupta, who is the president of the Indo-Hellenic Friendship League and also the trustee of the Indira Gandhi National Center of Arts. He has been studying the Greek theater for long, and his book is considered as a milestone book on the Greek theater. He was an Onassis scholar and well-read in the students of the theater, Greek theater. Also my teacher. I request him to take the floor and share his views on this language and the culture and literature which this language carry. Professor Bharat Gupta, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everybody, to all the excellencies, to all my professor friends. And I think for just a second, I was able to see my very, very old friend, Yangos Andriadis, somewhere here. And I'm so happy to just get a glimpse of him. Dear friends, it's a matter of great delight, immense delight, that I have this opportunity to speak on this International Greek Day. And I thank Professor Anil Kumar and the Greek chair and the University of JNU for it. Now, I'm not a philologist or a deep scholar of the Greek language. I spent a long time, almost 40 years, trying to get close, understand, enjoy, participate sometimes, and understand the thinking and the workings of people who produced ancient Greek theater. And I was drawn to Greece through the stories, as I suppose most young, impressionable minds across the globe are, to the Greek myths. I don't like using the word myth now because it has a connotation of falsehood, but nothing is more true than the ancient Greek stories, because they tell us too much about ourselves, sometimes more than we want to hear, but they speak the truth. So they are not myths in the sense of just fantasy, but they are real truths. So I was attracted to them as a child, and then when I did a profession of English literature, I could see that Greek theater was something quite different from which I could gather from the great authorities of Oxford and Cambridge and other Western world. And so I launched upon a study of it, grappling with the language as well. And of course, I had a long background in Sanskrit, the classical language of India. And I discovered a whole new world. It was through ancient Greek theater that I could see the immense reach that these two ancient civilizations made. You see, the Greek language, like the Sanskrit language, is very unique. Apart from various other things, it's unique because these two languages are still vibrant and living languages. Of course, Greek is a living spoken language in Greece and in so many parts of the world. And so is Sanskrit, a language living through all the languages of India. And just now, Vismini gave some examples of Sanskrit through Hindi, and which is actually rather, if you look at it, it's ancient Greek and ancient Sanskrit together. Now, these languages, they were capable of influencing, not through material means or colonization or just technology or just science, but through the very thinking process, through the outreach of the mind, not just nations which were close to them, but very far and wide, very, very far and wide. As a matter of fact, I have always wondered that although there was a time, 2nd century BC or around that politically the Greeks were conquered by the Romans, but the Romans continued to venerate Greek as the language of understanding and intellect. And some of the best Romans thought that in their old age, they would retire to Delphi and meditate there or study there further. So it's an excellent example of how you can influence the mind most deeply. Now, it is not for me today to make a peroration on the influence of the Greek language down the centuries, or the influence of Sanskrit language to Far East, right up to Japan and Vietnam, or even in the West, because it seems that there were very, very old connections between the two ancient languages, not just the connections which were mentioned very rightly so of the period of the Indo-Bactrian period, when portion of India was ruled by some of the Greek kings, and the great contribution they made in spreading various arts and sciences of Greek origin into India. Not just that, but that if you go far back, then you find an immense impact. Now, it was through theater that I was able to see that the whole vision of reaching towards a reality which is beyond the human reality, of trying to discover what is the divine, what is far above the human influence, constantly to explore it and to understand it. This was the very crux of ancient Greek culture, which was seen in ancient Greek theater, because Greek theater gives us an account of what the Greeks felt, that the gods are constantly visiting the humans, and the humans are rising above to become gods or demigods. Now, this is something which is a particular way of philosophizing, of seeing the reality, of seeing the truth in the ancient world. And this has been shared pretty much the same way by the ancient Indians. And it continues to be shared by the Indians to this day. In the case of Greek civilization, there was the introduction of Christianity, which modified it in some ways. But this most wonderful thing that man reaches out, that human beings reach out to truth, to an understanding of the highest, and at the same time are very conscious of their own limitations. It's the Greeks who spelt very clearly the idea of hubris, that so much and not more, that if you depend too much upon yourself, then things go wrong. I suppose they are going wrong these days in Corona. Maybe there is a hubris in it. And the ancient Greeks warned us about it, that if human beings trust themselves too much, if they become overconfident, then some things can go wrong. This was a very special contribution of the Greek mind. And this is seen most beautifully in the works of their ancient playwrights, the great tragedians and the great theater writers of ancient Greece. That is the reason why ancient Greek theater has influenced world theater unlike any other theater form. It is through the power of these stories, myths, if you want to call it mythoi, that there has been this great capturing of the modern mind. by the ancient stories, because they again and again remind us of what we are and what we should not try to be. There is a lot that I can say about the relationship between India and Greece, and there's a lot that I can say of how an interaction between the Greeks and the Indians can take place in future. I'll just say a couple things, because this is something which is very close to my heart, as I would like to see more and more cooperation between the young Greeks and the young Indians to understand, study, and know each other's culture. We had in the 19th century the great period of philology, and that, as you all know, changed the intellectual landscape in Europe in the 18th, 19th century. And we had these great scholars like the Greek Dimitrios Galanos, who came and spent 32 years in Varanasi. Actually, if there is one European scholar, call him European, call him from Greece or whatever, or European or Western, if there is one Indologist who came and spent a real lifetime in India and spent all his life or the best part of his life in India, then it was Dimitrios Galanos. And 3 years ago, we were very lucky at the Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts to celebrate a 6-day seminar, 3 days in Delhi and 3 days in Varanasi, about his works and about his activities and the great, great contribution that he made as a philologist. Now, the reason I mention him is that that was one golden age of study by a sincere Greek mind of India, and taking the knowledge of India, Sanskrit, to Greece. I think that in the future years, the areas which would be studied by the young Indians would be different. They perhaps would not go along, perhaps they cannot go along the same lines of philology or theology or the older subjects, but they have to go in the areas which are more vibrant and which there is a larger interaction of the educated people and even the common people. And these areas, apart from theater, to my mind, are music and painting. Because Greek painting and Greek music is as alive and different and vibrant as, let us say, the Greek language or the whole intellectual concept of Greece. Of course, music has its very practical applications or popular applications, and people may not like very, very modern contemporary Greek music like Skiladika and all that. But then I have seen that in Greece and among the young Greeks, Greek musicians, there is an immense interest in the music of India. And similarly, it is the music of Greece that attracts Indian musicians. I have talked to so many of them, and I facilitated sometimes their visit, and I could find that the Indian musicians feel very much at home when they are among the Greek musicians, and vice versa. I know many young Greeks who would like to come and study Indian music, and that is one area in which something very new, different, and very contributive can be done. Similarly, in painting, Greek painting is not very morose or depressing or absurd or abstract, like, let us say, the French painting or British painting. It's something which is lively, which is dynamic, and which is down to earth. We had very recently, just a month back, an exhibition of Greek painters, and my observations could describe the three painters who were represented then. So I see an immense future for interaction, and I hope that the two governments, the Greek and the Indian governments, would also seriously think of patronizing. I'm using an old-fashioned term, that is facilitating study in these 3, 4, and maybe other areas to create a new dynamism at the cultural level in the Indo-Greek relations. So thank you so much for giving me a patient listening. And I am very happy again to be part of this International Greek Language Day.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. We have Professor Arunam Bandyopadhyay with us, who is chairperson of the Center of Russian Studies. He has studied the influence of or the relationship of the Greek and Russian language, and I have requested him to present his a little summary of his studies here. So I invite Professor Arunamji to share his views with us. Sir.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, respected colleagues, dear students, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are celebrating Greek Language Day. This great language made a significant impact on many languages. Greek also made a huge impact on Russian language. Greek religious and also the non-religious texts enriched Old Russian literature. Old Russian texts are full of Greek words. For example, apostol from apostolos, ikona, icon from ikon, monastir, monastery from monasterion, ad, hell from Hades, etc. There are also instances of translation of Greek words and expressions into Old Russian language, drevny ruski язык. The translation of several literary texts from Greek into Old Russian shows the techniques adopted by the translators to express the meaning of simple and complex Greek words. There are instances of simple Greek words translated into complex Old Russian words. For example, gynikos, in Russian blagorodny, nobleman. Many complex Greek words were also calqued by the translators in Old Russian. For example, Chrysostomos. Chrysostomos translated as Zlata usti, means golden mouth. Philosophia translated as Lyuba mudrie, from philos, lyubich, love, and sophia, mudrast, wisdom. However, the speakers of modern Russian language use the word philosophia. This word entered Russian vocabulary in the 18th century, thanks to the cultural and trade relations of Russia with the Western Europe. There are also instances of one Greek word being represented by two different Russian words. For example, Old Russian idalosluzhnik and kumirosluzhnik correspond to Greek word eidololatres, idol worshipper. Many Greek words were borrowed from the Western European languages when Russia established diplomatic, cultural, and trade contacts with the Western Europe in the 18th century. We noticed two distinct phonetic systems of pronouncing Greek words in Russian during this period. One introduced by Erzam of Rotterdam and another introduced by Johann Reuchlin. The Reuchlinian way of pronunciation was introduced before the Erzamian in Russia, since Byzantium and Russia already had contacts in cultural and religious spheres. The Erzamian way of pronouncing Greek words was followed after Russia established diplomatic, cultural, and trade contacts with the Western Europe. The phonetic system introduced by Erzam of Rotterdam corresponds to pronunciation of a word with its graphical presentation. The phonetic system introduced by Johann Reuchlin was formed on the basis of living Byzantine speech, which is different from classical Greek. This system was introduced in Russia before the introduction of Erzam's phonetic system, and it was popular in churches and monasteries. The Reuchlinian system is used in reading religious texts. According to the Reuchlinian system, Greek letter theta is pronounced f in Russian, beta v, sigma s, a and diphthongs oi pronounced e. Greek words starting with aspirated a, o, e are pronounced in Russian without aspiration. For example, alphabet in Russian alphavit, alphabet. Athena in Russian Afina, Athens. Historia in Russian Historia, history, etc. According to the Erzamian system, Greek letter theta is pronounced th, dental th, beta b, sigma z. Greek words starting with aspirated a, o, e are pronounced in Russian with an initial g. For example, theatron, theatron is theater, thema, thema, bibliotheca, bibliotheca, harmonia in Russian, garmonia, etc. Most of the Russian words borrowed from Greek follow either way of pronunciation, either Erzamian or Reuchlinian. However, both Reuchlinian and Erzamian ways are used in pronouncing some Russian words. For example, rhythm in Russian, we say rhythm and also rhythma. Proper noun Fyodor, we pronounce as Fyodor and also Fyodor. The borrowed Greek words were also subject to the morphological adaptation in Russian. For example, words ending with ma, such as dogma, problema, systema in Greek belong to neuter gender, but they are feminine in Russians since they end with a. Words ending with is, such as phrases, basis, analysis, belong to masculine gender in Russian, though they are feminine in Greek. The Greek words borrowed before the 18th century were mostly related to religious and spiritual concepts, and words borrowed after the 18th century related to various aspects of intellectual understanding like natural science, philosophy, art, culture, etc. Since the 18th century, Greek words were borrowed mainly from English, French, German, and Latin. And it is interesting to note that the original Greek words, not the translation of these words, were introduced in Russian during this period. And the Erzamian method was applied in pronouncing and writing them. So I would like to conclude by saying that Russian language has been greatly enriched by Elliniki glossa, the great language of science, culture, and philosophy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We have Professor Dhananjay Singh with us, who is Chairperson and Associate Dean of the School of Language, Literature and Culture Studies. He has specialized in the study of Indian tradition as well as in the Irish culture, and he has did a very good commentary on the Aristotle's Poetics. He has always came to the students who are studying at the Greek chair to lecture on the aspects of the lingual interaction of the world literature with the Greeks. So I request Professor Dhananjay Singh to share his views with us. Professor Dhananjay Singh.
Thank you, Professor Anil Kumar Singh. My respect to the Excellencies, the Ambassador of Greece, His Excellency, the Ambassador of Ireland, Brendan Ward, the Ambassador of Cyprus, of the European Union, my great gratitude and respect to Professor Bharat Gupta and my colleagues from JNU. Today, I'll talk about, since I have an interest in Irish literature, I'll talk about the relationship between Greece and Ireland in a historical context. Obviously, two great ancient civilizations, the Celtic civilization and the Greek civilization has had an interaction, obviously. And in Ireland, before what is understood as, and let me take my cue from His Excellency, the Ambassador of Ireland, James Joyce was particularly insistent that the copies of his Ulysses, which has a centenary this year, should be in the color of the map of the color of the flag of Greece, which is of course blue, which Joyce had in his room in Paris. So obviously, apart from the fact that he was the one who so to say connected modern Ireland with ancient Greece by using the figure of Daedalus, Stephen Daedalus, and to whom he of course called his great artificer in Portrait of Arctis, young man, and Ulysses, and through whom obviously he wanted so to say fly through the nets of religion and nationality, and language. That's what he thought. Let me take you, as I said, briefly to the historical connections. Ireland was, of course, known as a land of the culture where the bardic poetry and the bards, of course, were understood as Phile, and they were constantly, interested in translations of Greek and Latin classics. What I'm trying to say is this: that when we are celebrating the legacy of the Greek language, and with the legacy of the language, of course, the legacy of culture and civilizational thoughts, what I want to stress is this: that this relationship of the Greek and the Irish language, literature, and literary consciousness was both about finding a national spirit in the times of colonial subjugation by England, at the same time seeking a transnational imagination of thinking about a better world. So the relationship between the Greek language and literature and the Irish language and literature was both about finding expressions for local cultural meanings as well as national meanings. For instance, all Irish writers, W.B. Yeats, James Synge, Flann O'Brien, At Swim Two Birds, James Joyce, we talked about it, they're all interested. And the important historical context for us is this: that with what we understand as the flight of the Earls in the 17th century, and what we understand in the fall of the Gaelic order, when, of course, the study of the Irish language, Irish music, was, so to say, subjugated in Ireland, and the Ordnance Survey, of course, in 19th century. This whole idea was this: Ireland did not have, therefore, a civilization within quote. For the Irish writers and for the young, let's say, Irish Catholic school-going children and boys and girls, obviously primarily boys at that time, the fact that there was a continuity with the Greek language, continuity with Greek literature in the head schools. Now, head schools are the schools that came, of course, in 18th, 19th century after the penal laws in the aftermath of Williamite War. To make it kind of simple, in Ireland, it happened, of course, after the Williamite War in 1690 and whole kind of 18th century, that for reasons, obviously, in the interest of the colonial power, those who did not subscribe to the Anglican Church could not go to school. In response, what happened was this: that the local Irish, obviously the Catholics, they started going to head school. The point I'm trying to make here is this: that the continuity of the relation between Greek and Irish, and a very political relation, enabling relation, anti-colonial relation, was based on the fact that these school-going children in the head school continued to read Greek grammar, Latin grammar, primarily Greek grammar, and Greek authors like Homer. Brian Fran has a very powerful anti-colonial text called Translations, in which a schoolmaster, Hugh, obviously the schoolmaster, says that, well, we are close to the warmer Mediterranean. So in that sense, what I'm trying to say is this: William Carleton is another kind of writer, obviously Irish novelist and poet, 19th century, where he talks about, he gives a list of the elements of Greek language and literature and text that were taught in the head schools. And it continues, so to say, it continues in building up Irish national consciousness on two lines, one in the global context as well as the Irish context. To give just one example, William Butler Yeats, obviously, his famous lines in a poem called September 1913, romantic Ireland is dead and gone, it's with O'Leary in the grave. He remembers John O'Leary, the great figure, obviously, almost founder of IRB. One marker for Irish nationalism, or the sense of Irish nationality, that William Butler Yeats and many like him at that time, including James Joyce, thought was, which was based on study of great literature, developing a nobility of thought. And this nationality, because John O'Leary himself was a great scholar and was a writer, like many of the Irish revolutionaries, and he was a great scholar of Greek literature. And it continues to 20th century, 21st century, in the field days, theater company, Seamus Heaney. Because for the lack of time, obviously, I'll stop with one reference to Seamus Heaney's translation of Sophocles of Philoctetus, and Heaney's translation, of course, is remarkable in a way, remarkable in the context of the troubles, of course, in Northern Ireland, and we all know that Heaney was a favorite poet of many great leaders, of course, in the 20th century, 21st century, contemporary times, looking for solutions to the global problems, obviously, so much so that, of course, American President Joe Biden, as all of us know, when he filed his Democratic nomination as from the Democratic Party, obviously in the US, he read these lines from Seamus Heaney's Philoctetus, Cure at Troy, which is a translation of Sophocles Philoctetus, and the lines were, of course, history says, don't hope on this side of the grave, but then once in a lifetime, the long for tidal wave of justice can rise up, and hope and history rhyme. Now, this is Heaney's, of course, translation, creative translation of Sophocles Philoctetus, and to Heaney, and that's the greatness of Greek literature. Is this that study of Greek literature is not simply about studying something which is ancient, but all great literatures, including Sanskrit, Greek, or Celtic. That's why Cuchulainn would become an inspiring figure. Helen would be constantly referred to by all Irish poets. These literatures, of course, Greek literature is great because it contains those fundamental problems that human civilization has continued to grapple with. So for Heaney, and to quote from Heaney, and with that, of course, I'll end. For him, Sophocles Philoctetus is a text that speaks to Northern Ireland, not the problem of Northern Ireland and the question of Northern Ireland throughout the troubles, obviously, and for him, and I quote him, but the main attraction was the material itself. In particular, the way Sophocles explores the conflict experienced by the character Neoptolemus, which is the crunch that comes when political solidarity required from him by the Greeks is at odds with the conduct he requires from himself if he is to maintain his self-respect. Now, that kind of dilemma was familiar to the people on both sides of the political fence in Northern Ireland. Now, that is what is a continued kind of legacy of Greek language and Greek literature. Obviously, on another occasion, I'll definitely have time to talk about Indian, there's a close connection, cultural connection in terms of etymologies between from Greek, India, and Ireland. That's something which interests me all the time. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Professor Singh. It was an honor indeed.
Thank you, Dhananjay ji. It is always wonderful to hear from you, to listen you And now, Professor, may I request Professor Sushant Ji? Sushant Kumar Mishra is chairperson of the French and Francophone Studies in our university, and I request him to share his views with us and the influence of Greek on French or Indian languages. Sir.
Thank you, Dr. Anilji, Excellencies, Honorable Dean, Associate Dean, and dear colleagues. Of course, it is an honor to talk about Greek. My association with Greek was slightly remote, though now it is direct. I am a student of Latin languages, Neo-Latin languages. He talked about French, but I know a few other Latin languages also. And the moment you interact with these cultures, there is a direct trace to older forms of Latin. Now that took me to older forms of Latin. And then the moment I go back in whatever field I research or I teach or I try to understand, I have 3-4 sources on which I have to bank upon. One, the older Latin sources. And as you all know, that the moment you take any Latin book written in medieval ages, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, it is strewn with Greek. There are lots and lots of Greek words used in the Latin texts in the medieval. So how to understand those Latin texts? And that was a challenge. The other problem that I faced is that I have to understand along with the language, of course, the etymological roots, philology, and all these are very important disciplines. But along with comes a package of culture. Now I have to understand the culture also, because without that I cannot understand. And it has various aspects. For example, a very oft quoted person in my field of research is Saussure. He's always talked about, whether you talk of structuralism, entire 20th century or anything, he's always talked about. Now he worked on the absolute genitive case in Sanskrit language. Now I took some time to understand and ask myself the question, what is absolute genitive case? Okay, in Sanskrit language, everybody would say that he worked on Sanskrit language, no doubt about it. But what is this absolute genitive case? I understand what is genitive case, but what is this absolute doing here? It took me back straight to the Greek. If I want to understand any Latin text, the content of it, somebody mentioned grammar, one of the excellencies. The grammar itself is a Greek word. And if I want to understand linguistics, one of the core foundational texts take me back to the grammatical systems of Greeks as they evolved. So whether it was language, of course, linguistic similarities and some words and overall Indo-European cultural affiliations, all these things are there. But if I want to understand Europe, which is a very important aspect of the contemporary world, wherever we go, whether India or China or anywhere, or Japan, if I have to understand, I had 2-3 sources. And for long, I was associated with teaching a course, which is taught in my center. That is history of Western thought. By Western, we often understand European. Though technically it is not Western, Western can be American, but that's how we understand. So history of Western thought, sources and origins. Now, what are the sources and origins? It took me straight not only to Latin sources, but there were 2-3 sources that I could identify. One is of course, the Christian source. So along with the moment I find the Christian source, I have to go back to the New Testament, coming from Greek. 3rd, 4th century Greek. I cannot avoid it if I really want to understand. Just the Latin also didn't work. And even the Old Testament, at least to the European mind, it comes from the Greek translation. So the Christian source. Then you come back, at least we have to study, and there were several authors who were challenging the Christian way of thinking in Renaissance period, 16th, 17th century. A lot of them were killed. And one of the scholars killed, at least in my context, he is a very important scholar, Etienne Dolet. Now, this person was killed for translating a particular dialogue of Plato. Of course, whether the dialogue is original, spurious, all these debates are there. But the very fact that he was translating a text, And for that, he was killed. And what was the problem? The problem is the non-Christian origin. So the moment you come to the contemporary Europe, which is my field of study, I have to understand the old Greek mindset, that is pre-Christian mindset in various fields. And most of the scholars mentioned, whether Sophocles or most of the scholars mentioned today, come from that particular mindset. We can talk of philosophy, most of the disciplines that we talk about. But in terms of language, if I had to understand, it took me straight. Any text I study, I have to fall back on these languages. Then further, when I research, another aspect that opened up, that along with that, Europe had opened up directly to India. So there was a relationship, though they went to Persia in order to understand India. So relationship between Persia and India. And that again took me to such scholars. One of the scholars I will mention, and there are plenty of them. One of the scholars, very important, the one who translated Upanishads into Latin, is in modern times, the earlier translations I'm not talking about, he is a French scholar, Duperon, Anquetil Duperon. Now I went to his text. He writes in Latin, is strewn with here and there again Greek. The articles will be in Greek. So how to understand the text itself? That took me to the journey of Greek. And then if I have to understand not only the language, not only the linguistic culture, but also the other general elements of culture, other social formation, whether it is in terms of Christianity or other non-Christian ways of thinking, then even if I have tried to understand the Indic origin thoughts as sources and origins of European culture, the texts that came to me, they were all either in Latin or in Greek or mixed. I had no other choice. That took me to this journey. And for that matter, I feel that a certain way of understanding Greek mixed with Latin is quintessential to understand the contemporary world. We cannot understand the contemporary world. And in fact, some of the disciplines, as Professor Bharat Gupta also mentioned, this discovery of mine I dedicated to you, sir. As you said that there were some disciplines like philology and similar such disciplines, we have been doing in multiple ways. And in contemporary times, the newer scholars, the younger scholars, they will take these fields as per the requirements of the contemporary times. And I have slightly worked in that field with one of the premier institutions of India, which works on Indian languages. And if I want to understand the class and classify the Indian languages, the linguistic tools and elements that come, so sure I mentioned, the other linguistic tools and elements that help me do it, again, go back to the Greek way of thinking. Indian ways of thinking are parallelly very important, but they have not yet been fully explored. But the Greek way of thinking, consequently, if I have to understand these texts, and if I have to classify and I have to understand the classificatory mechanism for working in the contemporary ways of classifying language, whether it is Google or any other such similar tools, whether it is computational linguistics or mathematical linguistics, all these take me back straight to the ways of thinking, the ways of classifying as they were done in the older Greek texts. There is a direct influence. So all these things took me to Greek, and that has been my journey. And of course, once I personally visited the Heliodorus pillar in Madhya Pradesh, so every interest was kindled by that historical visit of my life, where I found that there is an Indian local element mixed with, culturally mixed with the European ways of thinking. And then there are various texts, there are various ways of looking at the contemporary academic disciplines. And in understanding of those disciplines, we cannot do away the way the Greeks have thought, because that is the guiding principles of the entire post-16th century modern world. 16th century is often called the modern world, because in philosophy, at least, that is the modernist, the breaking point. And after that, whether we talk of literature, whether we talk of literary understanding, or we talk of other cultural or scientific evolutions, the tools came from a basic understanding of the multiplicity in the world that existed in the ancient texts that the Greeks had written, and that was in common with India. In India, it survives till date, and I believe it survives actually everywhere in the world, whether we acknowledge it or not. Multiplicity is the way we all live, we all have lived. So looking at that aspect, that has been my journey and my affiliation with the Greek language. I have been learning the language to understand the text since 2016. Incidentally, as I said, that I went to learn Latin, but I couldn't even understand Latin without trying to understand, to make effort to understand Greek. So it has been 5 years journey directly with the language and for trying to understand the various aspects of the language. Let's see how long it takes. I trust that in the next 5 years, I should be proficient to read the texts which I want to read. So a decade journey is required, and Dr. Anil Singh has always been kind enough to provide me opportunities for this, along with many others. In fact, one of the scholars who was here, he still continues to teach me, kind enough to continue to teach me, Professor Katonis. He was here, I went to him thanks to Professor Singh, and he still continues to teach me. So I would suggest that we should continue if we want to understand the contemporary world, whether in terms of science, technology, or culture, or language, or linguistically, we have to take this journey, which is a very compulsory journey. Thank you. Thank you, sir, for allowing me to share my basic ideas, very preliminary ideas.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. You have a great Philhellene in this part of the world. Thank you. And we have Dr. Abha Yadav ji with us, who is member of the Indo-Hellenic Friendship League, as well as very well supporter of all the efforts which we are doing here, being the joint registrar of the JNU. Now she is in Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs as an associate professor. She was senior to me in the University of Ioannina as an EK scholar. So I request her to share her experiences with the language. Dr. Abha Yadav.
Namaskar and a very good evening. Kalo Apogevma, pardon my pronunciation after ages. A very, very good evening, Kalo Apogevma, to the excellencies, distinguished guests, senior professors of the university, and everybody who's listening here. Heartiest congratulations on the International Greek Language Day. And thank you, Dr. Anil, for making me a part of this great and learned gathering. It's absolutely been a pleasure, though it came as a surprise. I was wondering, how come I'm a lawyer by profession, but Dr. Anil happens to know about my past, and it's a beautiful past in terms of Greek language. If I may start by saying that I'm an alumni of a bygone era, when the Greek language classes, I don't know how many of you are aware, but in Delhi, when I was in college, I was studying in Delhi University, and I finished my first year of commerce education, so BCom I was doing, and I was told, I got to know, and in those days there was no internet, nothing, no social media, but I got to know that I think it was advertised in the newspapers, and I've always been interested in the classical languages. So this was a bygone era when the Greek language classes used to be held in the High Commission of Cyprus at Jorbag. And the year was about 2008, and we had our teacher coming to teach us from the embassy of the embassy of Greece. And her name was Miss Dora Gota. She was one of the officials, senior officials at the embassy. She was a great teacher, and we were a very small bunch of students who were extremely, eager to learn, and we were so fascinated with the culture. And we made all that effort to, travel to Jorbag, and in the late evening hours, we would take those classes at the High Commission of Cyprus. Now, of course, there's a very nice building, and you've all shifted to Chanakyapuri area. So congratulations for that also. But that building was coming up while we were studying at Jorbag. I'm very happy to see the passion and love for Greek language that binds all of us sitting here. As I said earlier, I'm a lawyer by profession and also a public policy enthusiast. And in the course of legal parlance, I commonly come across, along with Latin, which we are required to learn and we are required to, sort of recite, many Greek maxims that are an absolute delight for me. In fact, so many times I'm asked how I am so comfortably able to memorize the Latin and Greek maxims. And I think that is where the training, I think I learned Greek for about 3 to 4 years. It's been 2 decades. It's hard to believe for me. So taking the argument also made by Professor Mishra that you cannot, move ahead into the understanding of law without really knowing these ancient languages, Latin and Greek, both of them. As we all know, time and again, when we, as lawyers, when we are trained into jurisprudence of law, the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, he outlined the rule of law in his work titled Politics. We all know all democracies swear by the rule of law, that is a principle established in ancient Greek that holds all people and organizations accountable for the same set of laws. So this is where our training begins as lawyers. And of course, I would like to throw some more light on, from a paper that was written as early as 1907, where it is said that while one is studying Latin and Greek, she's being trained in a method very much like that which one must pursue in construing a law. So as a lawyer, we are expected to pick up a statute that is just enacted and begin to study it carefully to find out what its full meaning and effect is. And you're precisely doing the same thing when you take a passage out of, let's say, Livy or Tacitus and endeavor to find its exact meaning. So every word while we are construing a law must be weighed, and the point of its position in the sentence should be determined. The and, the commas, the full stops, the semicolons, everything matters in law as well as while deciphering any language. So the effect of former laws in a case is like the effect of a preceding sentences or the context, and the meaning of that sentence as related to the following sentences as to whether it makes a complete story. This is like the consideration of full meaning of the statute itself in connection with the rest of the substantive law on the question involved. So this determination of the meaning of statutes is one of the most practical duties of a lawyer. And it will hardly be maintained by anyone that as a preparation for this sort of work, the natural sciences or mathematics will have a practical value in training equivalent to that of a language such as Greek and Latin. So here I think whatever may be the class of my argument, we all shall agree that the day has gone which could prompt the couplet of Edmund Waller. Poets who would marble seek must come in Latin or Greek. I repeat, poets who would marble seek must come in Latin or Greek. And so with very few exceptions, I would like to say that lawyers who have come to distinguish themselves in their profession and to be of use to the world have come through Latin or through Greek. And of course, when we hear our great judges speaking, I would also add Sanskrit to this. Coming back to my journey and my love of the Greek language, which Dr. Anil is very well aware of, whatever little time I have gotten over the years, I've tried to brush up, I've tried to remember the language. I'm not able to do as much as I would like to, but I got a fellowship and a scholarship to study the language at the University of Ioannina in Greece, which was altogether a phenomenal experience. From the world of books, alphabets, reading, trying to decipher, I was able to experience the culture firsthand. So it was a large cohort. I think this was the year was again, I think 2009 or so. And our cohort had, even before that, much earlier than that. And our cohort had gathered from all corners of the world, and we were all, Greek language and culture enthusiasts. And the faculty was so supportive. And we had, the pronunciation difficulties, the usual trajectory of learning a language. And I have these wonderful memories that I cherish. It's absolutely a delight today to hear from Professor Bharat Gupta. Namaskar, sir. Your deep insight into the subject is always an enlightening experience, and the kind of connection that Professor Bandyopadhyay made with the Russian language has been amazing to hear. It also sparks so much of enthusiasm in people like me who want to brush up the language, like I said. Professor Dhananjay Singh. As always, it's been wonderful to hear from you, Professor Mishra. And I'm looking forward to hear from other luminaries, Professor Mazhar Asif. And also, I was delighted to see, like Professor Gupta said, Professor Andreadis, because there was a time after returning that I learned that, and at that point in time, that I had no real connection with JNU. I was a Delhi University student, and I heard that some Greek language classes are now starting. We were told at the High Commission and at the embassy that JNU has taken up the language, and I met Professor Andreadis and took a few classes of his. So again, I think it was the passion for the language that we used to finish our classes in Delhi University and then come to JNU and attend his classes. I have tried, like I said, many times to revive my skills, and I would continue to do that as time permits. I would like on this occasion to congratulate Dr. Anil for strengthening the understanding of the Greek language and the partnership between the two countries by establishment of the center at the School of Languages. I think that was much needed, and he's doing phenomenal work. I congratulate you for that, sir. And I thank you for this opportunity, and I hope to continue with this liaison in the future. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, Abaji. Thank you so much. I can see Jacopo Mosesso. He is the person who has initiated the teaching of Greek language at the Vellore Institute of Technology in the southern part of the country, and he attended some of my programs earlier. So I requested him to join us, and I would like to hear, we all would like to hear, in fact, his experience of teaching Greek to Indian students and his journey with Greek so far. Jacopo Mosesso.
Professor Anilji, thank you so much for the invitation to this great event. It's really impressive to see how many luminaries you have managed to gather all around something that we all love and pursue. My respects to the authorities and to all the respected colleagues. I'm really honored to be here, and I'm calling today from Europe. I'm not in India. I'll be going back to my campus in Vellore next month, because the institute is reopening now that the measures are being reduced. And so I started teaching at VAT in 2018. I'm affiliated with University of Cyprus in Lefkosia, and I am a Greek lover. I'm not from Greece, I'm from Italy, but I studied modern Greek literature at university. I'm a deep lover of Greek language, especially of contemporary Greek literature. So I started teaching Greek at Vellore Institute of Technology, and it was impressive to see how much potential is there in India, because there is a huge system of university in such a big country. And in Europe, to be honest, Greek is always struggling a little bit to occupy a predominant position in big cultural institutions. I'll give an example. In Sapienza University of Rome, which is the biggest university in Europe in terms of student population, we have a chair of modern Greek studies, and the number of students is comparatively small. It's around 25 students per year. In Vellore Institute of Technology, we managed to have more than 120 students, new students per year, which is, in terms of quantity, obviously really impressive. It's obviously something pretty pioneeristic, because JNU is obviously one of the oldest institutions that are promoting Greek language and culture in India. And I think that there is a lot of work that can be done in order to disseminate and spread the teaching of Greek language and culture across the country. And there's a huge potential about it. Professor Anilji is extremely active, and he's doing definitely an impressive work in this sense. And I'm sure that this occasion is an amazing occasion to involve institutions and facilitate cooperation. which is extremely important because with such a great potential, I think it would be possible to really make India one great pole in the world for the dissemination and promotion of Greek culture, because it's something that we can build from the scratch. Also, it's a great occasion, a great chance to promote Greek language and literature with a contemporary perspective, which is also very important. Usually, Greece and the Greek culture and Cyprus as well are seen in a very crystallized way through the mirror of the crystallized classical ideal. In India, the promotion of Greek culture is definitely an occasion, a chance to promote also a contemporary image of literature and culture. As a massive enthusiast of contemporary literature and the most modern part of Greek literature, I really think that should be important as well and taken into consideration. Greek literature is not only classical literature, Kavafis, but it's also Elitis, Seferis, and the new writers that nowadays are so active, and there's such a thriving scene in Greece and Cyprus right now in the literary scene. So thank you so much, Anilji, for this invitation.
Thank you, thank you. So we are almost coming to the conclusion of the program. Before I request the Dean of our school for chair's remark, I would like to invite Astha Srivastav. She is continuing her studies in Greek language for last 2-3 years, a very bright student of the Jawaharlal Nehru University, to share her experiences with us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Astha Srivastav, as Mr. Anil just introduced me. And well, I have been studying Greek for the past 6 years, actually. I started my studies in JNU. I did my bachelor's and master's in Japanese, but I got the opportunity to study classical Greek and Latin. And I never really stopped after that, because both the languages are just quite interesting. And honestly, it has given a lot of insight, not just into, Greek literature, but also into the grammar. And it's strengthened my base for Greek grammar, but also for Japanese grammar. It's helped in understanding the fundamentals. And I think that's something that can be applied to other languages as well. So it has been a huge help. But there's also the thing which interested me and which still interests me is that I feel that there can be comparative studies between both the languages and cultures. So when I was doing my master's, I did a comparative study of Greek and Japanese origin myths. And I found that there were certainly some similarities, such as there's a myth about the gods, the Izanagi and Izanami in Japanese, which is very similar to the myth of Orpheus and Eurydike in Greece. And that was where it all started. And then I found out that there are different, aspects to the mythologies which are very similar. So that is where it all started. And as Anil sir mentioned, I've continued my studies under Professor Andreas Katonis, same as Mr. Sushant Mishra. And and I plan to continue studying so that my goal one day is to be able to read Homer in original Greek. So hopefully one day that will be a reality. And
Wish you good luck.
Thank you so much.
I would like to request Professor Mazhar Asif, Dean of the School of Language, Literature and Cultural Studies, to put Chair's remarks with us. We were supposed to hear Professor Rajneesh Mishra also, the Chief Proctor of JNU, but he's busy being in a proctorial job. He's busy, he couldn't join us. With us are Professor Vinay Kumar from Banaras Hindu University, Professor Renu Shukla from the Gurukul Kangadi University of Haridwar, and other scholars from many other universities. Due to lack of time, and I cannot take all the names, but I am grateful to all of them to join us today. Professor Mazhar Asif, sir.
His Excellencies, different ambassadors from Greece, Cyprus, Estonia, Ireland, European Union, Bulgaria, Embassy of Greece, and of course, keynote speaker, our senior colleague, respected teacher, Professor Bharat Gupta ji, my esteemed colleagues, Dr. Arunim Bandyopadhyay ji, Dr. Rajneesh Mishra ji, my friend and Associate Dean, Professor, Great Professor of English, Professor Dhananjay Singh ji, my friend, my classmate, my batchmate, Professor Sushant Mishra ji, Dr. Abha Yadav ji, and of course, my colleague and my brother, Dr. Anil Kumar ji. Namaskar, good afternoon. Kalo Apo Gyuma. At least I should speak one sentence because it is an International Day of Greek. So, on my behalf of the School of Language, Literature and Culture Studies, I offer my heartiest congratulations to all of you, follower of a great culture, admirer of a great language, and of course, a language which teaches us of philosophy and mythology. Friends, once upon a time, we, the people of India, people of Persia and Greece, we live together. We follow the same religion, same culture. We spoke the same language. I am from India. I am earning my bread and butter from Persian language. And I am great admirer of Greek philosophy. Because I am a student of Farabi, Ibn Sina, and Ibn al-Arabi. That's why I am admirer of Greek philosophy. My esteemed colleagues, I believe firmly that I may be wrong. If Sanskrit, Persian, and Greek, these are three languages which have protected or preserved our ancient culture, history, and civilization. We have common heritage, history, great encounter between art and the linguistics and the language, what my dear friend Professor Sushant ji and our respected teacher Professor Bharat Gupta ji has already elaborated. We have a number of Greek words which we are using in day-to-day our functioning. There is a term in Persian literature that is a Sufism. So one group of scholars, they claim that this Sufism or Tasawwuf has been originated from Sufia. There is a one group, they claim that. Apart from that, Almas, Langar, Usturlab, Atlas, Geographia, Taus, Fanus, Tiryak, Kimia, Okeanus, Yarkan, Injil, Kanun, Falsafe, Academy, Dam, Alif Ba. These are some of the common words used by us. All are originated from Greek. But I am shocked and surprised that despite all this great tradition and great culture, when Allama Iqbal said that Yunano, Misro, Ruma sab mit gaye jahan se. When he says that the culture of Greece and the Roman all has been wiped out from, why he have said that? If you read the Sare Jahan Se Acha, Hindustan Hamara, in the same, the last 4 lines, he says, कि यूनानो मिस्रो रूमा सब मिट गए जहां से अब तक मगर है बाकी नामो निशा हमारा और कुछ बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं हमारी सदियों रहा है दुश्मन दौरे जमा हमारा. These are okay. But despite all these things, the glorious part, that even today, like India, the Greece has preserved its own culture, history, civilization, what we call sanskar, sanskriti, and sabhyata. But I could not understand why Iqbal wrote that all the Greek Empire and the Roman Empire, they all have been wiped out from this world. So my request to all of you, please, those who are the admirer of the Greek culture and history, so we should look into why he had said. If he was wrong, then we should write something about that. No, Allama Iqbal was wrong when he says that Irano, Misra, Ruma, submit gaye jahan se. Why? Even the Greek, abhi bhi is as like India, is a protector of his own culture and civilization. With this a small remark, now I come to the main point. I am head of a school having 13 centers. We have a Sanskrit study here, we have a Persian studies here, but I am shocked that till now we have not been able to establish full-fledged center for Greek language and culture. So here all of the galaxies and the ambassadors from different countries are sitting here. So please, you help us. You help my colleague Dr. Nalin Kumar Singh ji to establish a full-fledged center for Greek culture and study. I am with you. Any kind of help from our side, from a school side, any kind of physical facilities, if you want, I am in your service. But we want that not only the Greek culture and Greek language. As you know, when we call the language had its culture, its history, the music and the dance and the culture, everything, what not? So what I dream, what I expect, that you people support us to establish a full-fledged center where we could have at least annual program showcasing your culture, your music, your dance and food and every aspect of life here in JNU. Number 2, being a member of National Education Policy, here we have very vehemently recommended that the foreign languages should be taught at school level as well as the higher in the universities and colleges. For that, recommendation is that in Government of India is going to establish international level of Institute for Translation and Interpretation Studies. And we are requesting Government of India, so kindly please give this institution to JNU so that our student can be benefited from this institute. So once again, I request all of you, please help us to establish a full-fledged center, because Greek, be it the language or linguistics and culture and history, like Sanskrit and Persian, no any aspect of life is left across the globe where these three languages has not left its impact. These are the three languages which all what we call in the Hindi, Gyan Parampara. The Gyan Parampara has been preserved by these three languages. So with these few comments, I once again, on behalf of the school, behalf of the great seat of learning, Jawaharlal Nehru University, I once again offer my heartiest congratulations to all of you to the International Day of Greek. And I thank you for joining us. I must thank to my colleague, Dr. Anil Kumar Singh ji, for organizing this kind of webinar, showcasing the Greek culture, language, and literature. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Now I request Dr. Manisha Tyagi to formally present the vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I really feel honored and benefited to get to deliver this vote of thanks on this special occasion of International Greek Language Day. According to, actually, I also want to say a few lines. According to me, a language is not only a collection of few words. A language is not only an expression of a particular reason from where it belongs. Language is actually a great connection between our external expressions and between our in our internal thoughts also. Language is actually a representation of our culture. And in this case, in this matter, Greek language really played a remarkable role. This language is not only the oldest important language in the world, but we can see its important role in the history of Western world also, as we listen and learned in today's session. Our great senior professors and other speakers delivered this very finely. I would like to thank all the honorable guests, delegates, and representatives of different countries and regions who blessed us with their presence. I, on the behalf of the organizing committee, convey deep regard and hearty thanks to our esteemed guest, His Excellency Mr. Dionysius Kavaitos. I'm also thankful to His Excellency Mr. Aegis Lauzon, High Commission of Cyprus. My special thanks goes to Her Excellency Ms. Katrine Kivi, Ambassador of Estonia. I would like to pay my hearty thanks to His Excellency Mr. Brendan Ward, Ambassador of Ireland. I would like to pay my hearty thanks to Her Excellency Ms. Ismini Panagopaula, First Consular Embassy of Greece, for her excellent presentation on the languages of different countries. I would pay my sincere thanks to His Excellency Mr. Ugo S. Chauro, Ambassador of European Union, and Ms. Eleonora Dimitrova, Ambassador of Bulgaria. I will pay my wholehearted thanks to Professor Bharat Gupta, Indira Gandhi National Center of Arts, New Delhi, Professor Arunim Bandyopadhyay from JNU, Professor Rajneesh Mishra from JNU, Dr. Abhay Yadav, Associate Professor, Professor Mazhar Asif, Dean from JNU, Professor Sushant Kumar Mishra from JNU. My words are not enough to thank you and your support to shape this special day. At last, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the organizer of this special day, International Greek Language Day, Dr. Anil Kumar Singh, Greek Chair, JNU, whose constant efforts make such fruitful presentation in front of us timely. So thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you, sir. And sorry, I've left one name, Mr. Jacopo Moseso. Sorry, your presentation is really very nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Manisha.
And to the students also, who joined the program, we should thank them because everything is for them.
Yes, yes. So with these words, once again, congratulating to all the people who participated today.
Dr. Anil Singh ji.
Yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt you. Mr. Jacopo Moseso, he raised a hand. He wanted to say something.
Okay. Yes.
No, sir. I just used the reaction. I was just clapping my hands virtually.
Okay, thank you.
So, with congratulations on this wonderful day. Thanks from my side as well. We are closing the session now with the permission of the Ambassador of Greece. Sir, do you permit us to close the program?
Thank you very much, Professor, and thank you all of you that participated at this very, very happy event. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Ms. Panagopoulou, that prepared together with you, and she presented to you our contribution. And I would like to thank also Professor Barat Kurte, who was with us today. Thank you, all of you. Thank you, my colleagues. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and young students and colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Close. Good night, everyone. Namaste.
Good night.
Namaste.
Ευχαριστώ. Καληνύχτα.
Ευχαριστώ.
Καληνύχτα, ευχαριστούμε.
Καληνύχτα σας.
Καληνύχτα.